All right. Hello, everyone. Can you guys hear me? Great. All right. So maybe let's give a couple more minutes. This is the first thing Saturday, so I can understand Saturday morning first thing will kind of take their own time. So probably give 5 minutes to get started. Yeah. Yes. No. All right. All right. So I think it's 10:05. Should we all get started? Do you all guys want to turn on your cameras once, and we can all see each other once, and then get started? This is how you're gonna do it. Hey, man. All right, let's do this. Let's take one big web selfie. I think internet is our home now, so might as well do that, man.
Hi, sir. Morning.
Hey, yes. How are you, Glenn? So if you
Fine, sir.
speak, I know who's speaking. So and I
Morning,
know.
sir.
Hey, morning. All right, amazing. So I think I'll just start the presentation off right now. If you guys ever have any bandwidth issue, the internet's not stable, do let me know in the chat room, and I will kind of see how we can loop back to the right content. So, sure, let me try and present now. Okay. Okay, so are you guys able to see the tile? Does it just say users in design brief history, or does it also show the slide next to it? All right, then. So we're going to talk about users and the design that has been along all through history and how we've kind of come to where UX is right now. So first thing, hello everyone, and I'm Ujjwal, like you all know, and I'll just quickly get through. But I will say thank you very much for taking on your time for the session today. I was just going to say I hope everyone is safe and social distancing themselves, which I see you are. Okay, and we are on our way to flattening the curve, and I think huge applause to everyone here, right? So I am Ujjwal. I am leading design at OnePlus R&D India. So our team's responsibilities are ensuring the principles of OS design are upheld as a primary goal. And what comprises of this is the OS design, user experience, visual design, collaboration with the ID team, and all products and features that are based out of India, and then design direction for a lot of visual aesthetics that come on the phone. I've been here for a while, 10 years in the UX industry, and worked on a lot of future products that are core to enterprise for some kids and a lot of different demographics. And so out of which we worked with Verizon, Dboard, Cisco, Quantla, Mindtree across a vast array of domains such as future generation ATMs to smart cities to virtual network services. A lot of plethora of work. So yeah, that's where I come from. And I've done my master's in human-computer interaction and usability from Edinburgh Napier University. So yeah. And what we are going to cover today is about design and then to user experience, and then we'll talk about how OnePlus does it, and how we can connect later on. So we'll look back at why this is important, followed by user experience and how this has come to be a topic for this session. We'll also cover key takeaways in practicing UX, and finally about our principles and history of OnePlus OS design. All through the session, we'll be covering the underlying thinking and logic behind designs and UX. So for those who have been in the design world, this would be a refresher to fundamental thinking, or B, a straightforward beginner session. An intermediate or expert session is something that I believe we can cover in a later or future webinars. And for those who have already been in one of my sessions, which is, I see that, and I've talked to the club here as well, and I see that it's the same kind of demographic that we are working with and the same kind of students, and it's kind of fair for us to kind of repeat this, and people can actually think through this. Yeah. So right, so a topic quite obvious one for this session is design, and so how and what about design? How do we break this down? Let me kind of bring this quote up, and this quote is by Bruno Murari. He has about 200 patents, and that's been used worldwide, which is a huge contribution to the world. So let's start with his quote. So when the objects we use every day and the surroundings we live in have become in themselves a work of art, then we shall be able to say that we have achieved a balanced life. It actually speaks volumes about design. One which I'll try and dissect with examples, and then as we break this down, you will understand what design or the kind of design thinking that goes into it. So let's dive into this quote now. So let's focus on the part where it says the object we use every day and the surroundings we live in. Let's just look at that. I mean, by looking at what seems to be common sense now, right? You kind of see, hey, this is supposed to be made this way. But there's this one project that I want to showcase, which is by an architect, a 3D modeler called Caterina Camprani. And she had done this project on the uncomfortable, which is about showcasing what if there was no, I mean, all of the common sense that being taken for granted right now, and what if that particular element is removed out of the equation. So it's about basically removing that part to kind of lay emphasis on what is missing. So when you see what is missing, you understand that part has been designed. So imagine this drinking cup, right? It looks all fancy and it has a wide mouth, and you pour hot tea into it or hot coffee into it. Now, think of the user who's about to drink it, right? So the way it was designed was not just because how much quantity can be poured in, but it is also about how much the user is able to sip in one gulp, right? So if you are A, holding by the wider side of it and then drinking, you have all of this on your pretty white little shirt that you're wearing, or you cannot hold it in an elongated way and drink it from the top, in which case it will pour all over you either. So the basis of it was the amount that the human can actually consume. Right? So the same goes with this spoon, and we'll be looking at a lot of these kind of examples to start with. Just on it, I know this kind of covers the industrial design side of things, but it is very important for you to understand what was designed. So our topic says invisible, and this is basically the invisible part that we don't see every day, right? So that exact pain point that you see here is what was designed, right? Why not have sugar taken off like this and poured into the teacup, right? That makes sense. But how about using the same spoon for eating your favorite brownie or cereals in the morning, right? And then a vanishing key, a key basically you would want to lose because once you put it in the keyhole, it disappears. So the aspect that was designed here was the part where it is parallel to the key, and then you apply a force to open it, right? And this part right here, imagine if it has a full pot of hot beverages in it, and then you're holding it in one direction. The energy or the opposing forces do not make sense. You cannot lift them. You do not have that kind of strength. A user or a human does not possess that strength to carry it, right? The same goes with the cup, which only has the handle uh, in the parallel fashion to the mouth cup, right? So it's not possible. So that's why it was designed, so that it's ease of use. So that's basically kind of feels common sense right now. But in this example, right, you can lift it. It's not about the materials. It's about the handles. You being able to carry these handles between your fingers. The weight of it, and the way you can handle it is what was designed, right? And then the same goes with this brush. Why not? I mean, we could find other ways. I mean, it makes sense, right? The friend molars, you can kind of use the brush, but you would find a way if this was designed. But now it feels common sense to be for the brush to be the way to be. And then the spectacles that we are looking at, nice fancy spectacles. But let's say if you are giving someone a brief, hey, I want my spectacles to be designed, you would say, hey, the frame should be lightweight, the glass should be unbreakable, and frameless with frame. But do you ever see telling someone who's designing and say, hey, the bridge should not be pointed, because now it has become common sense. If you wear, there's no longevity for this design. If you wear it all day, you probably will have a dent in your nose, right? And then you're probably bleeding. So that's now common sense. The bridge design is now common sense. The same goes with the thick buttons. This could be a fashion statement, but buttons being that thick won't fit the buttonhole, right? And then the last one being a little bit funny, inflatable door handles, right? They have to have been a certain materials for the door handle to work. It cannot be inflatable per se, because it will not support the strength of your arm to open the door. And then some few more examples that we'll look at before we dive in as well. And so look at the steps. So that thinking not just propagates from things around you, but also to spaces around you is what I'm trying to get to. And so, for example, in the stairs here, let's say 3 people start at the bottom of the stairs, and you're queuing up all the way when you go up. So that doesn't, I mean, for aesthetics you can do it, but that doesn't make sense as design. And this wine glass as well, right? It doesn't kind of go across the human anatomy. It basically doesn't make sense. For someone who wants to maybe sober up, maybe that works. But the third, I mean, the chair that we are looking at, right? So the opposite, the core common sense for you to lean back was designed. it's now in a posture where you're very uncomfortable, where you're in an upright position that is not sitting, that's not giving you comfort, that's not giving comfort for the user. So that particular element that is missing here was keenly thought about and designed. So fourth and the final one is kind of my favorite, but because it's not very um, common for you to see it, it doesn't feel like a bad design. You could have easily seen it on your restaurant tables. It's because salt and pepper. Now, if you want, if you want any of this, so this is like an hourglass, right? You have to turn it upside down, and then salt comes from the top chamber to the bottom chamber, and then you put it on whatever you want to put it on, right? So that will also not work, even though it looks great, but it's not like pretty evident right away when you see it. But that is also common sense, right? Free flowing of the material to be on your food. Yeah, but you looked at this and you would ask me, hey, this is a deliberate project, but how about something you encounter every day? You might see that, hey, all of these are concepts, but no one would ever commission something like this. But I'll show you something that you see every day. I know you're on lockdown, but once you go out of lockdown, you should observe a few things, and you will see this a lot, and you've observed this a lot, which is pull or push. Can you tell? This is this is a concept that the design world kind of propagates a lot. It's called the normal store. I'll kind of show what the better solution could be. But in this case, can you say, is it pull or push? Okay. Your guess is as good as mine. I would probably go push, but it'll probably pull. And you will see these doors all the time. But isn't this common sense? Wasn't that part? Shouldn't that part be designed? I will show you why not have a push plate. This is what is called the normal door, basically. So why not have a push plate when it has to push? Why do you need a handle when you need someone to push? And when pull, so that clearly tells you where push or pull, right? The same goes with the.
Hey, Ujjwal, we are just
Yeah.
seeing the 18 slide only. Sorry.
Oh, you're still on the 18. So are you just seeing the slides, or you are also
No,
seeing the next slide?
we're still on the title, which says like, how about something you encounter every day?
Oh, wait. Let me stop for something. All right. Yeah, thanks for that. I'm going to represent.
No problem.
Okay. So tell me this. Do you just see the slide, or do you just slide next to it?
Yep. We see how about something you encounter every day.
And that's it, right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So this. Now, do you see it?
Yep. Great.
So how about something you see every day? I've already talked volumes about it already. So how about something like this, right? Door handles for push and pull. And I was just saying, my guess would be as good as yours. We could both try pulling, but it could be a push door. And this is called the normal door that we were talking about. So the push, if you could just have a plate, and pull would have a handle. Isn't that common sense? But the world around us still kind of does that. You have handles all over, right? But it's still common sense. So the parts of this, I want you to bring from a point that what was invisible and what was designed, and what seems common sense, but also needs to be designed, and then bring you to a world around you that you can observe in a day in, day out. And now let's relook at the quote again, right? What does the second part mean? Have become in themselves a work of art. So for a particular design to become a work of art, what does that mean, right? So let's look at this kettle pot. What it does is it works with, so when you are, for those who've tried green teas or any sort of teas that had to be dipped in water, what it kind of does is as you leave the bag in there, it kind of becomes a little bitter, right? And it doesn't taste so good when you are at the end of your tea.
Hey,
Just
Ujjwal, I'm
kettle.
really sorry. Again, we're not able to follow the slides.
All right. So which slide are you in? Sorry.
20.
You're still here.
I don't know, but maybe some issue. when you're sharing screens or something.
Let me. 1 minute, guys. Let me know when the slide updates. Are you at 21 now?
No, Ready. Hey Ujjwal, if PPT is the issue, probably you can just convert it into PDF and then put it up.
Okay. All right, give me a minute. I'll just convert it to PDF. Maybe that's better. How about now? Are you able to look at the? Are you able to relook at the code?
Oh yeah, perfect.
All right then. Okay, so yeah, technology, right? So when the so I was just kind of laying emphasis on the second part of the code. So have become in themselves a work of art. What truly is work of art, and how can certain designs that are there to common sense get there as well? So we'll probably look at this kettle that I was just earlier talking about. So what I was trying to say was green tea, when you kind of get to the bottom of it, it kind of comes bitter. So this becomes a work of art because it also kind of elevates your sensory abilities. Because what it does, when you first put the green tea leaves or the dip in it, you can kind of lay that kettle down. And on the top part, there's a section, when you see this particular section, kind of separates the water and then the dip. And so for it to seep in, you can kind of tilt it a little, and then when it's ready, it's upright, and then the tea leaves do not soak into the water, and then it kind of gives you, it elevates when you try it. It's the best green tea that you could have, and that probably is the best thing for anyone, right? That's the best thing that any kettle could do for you. So that becomes now invisible, but a work of art. The same thing goes with this global knife, which is commercially available as well, which is very functional, sharp, and balanced. Everything that a knife should do perfectly. It's very well in your hand, tightly gripped with all that ridges on top of it, and then when you cut it perfectly and precisely to do. And it doesn't have to do. It doesn't. Right. Now, it doesn't have to do wonders, but as long as it gets to what it needs to do, it's perfect, invisible, and perfect work of art. The same goes with this juicer. It's from LIC. This is also commercially available. Now, what it becomes is it becomes an extension of your kitchen, not just getting to the utilitarian purpose of squeezing a lemon. It also becomes like the extension of your kitchen. That's basically a work of art. And yeah, so with that thinking, I think with that thinking of users, with that thinking of common sense is what we've talked about, and with that addressing users as work of art. Now that if we've understood what design is from that quote, we can kind of dive into user experience. So part one is essential in understanding what design fundamentals could be, and part two of user experience can let us dive into what users actually wanted, why user experience is it, why do we even need user experience. So we'll kind of look at how it all started, where it has all been, and then that will kind of help us understand why user experience in the first case. So it all started all the way in ancient Greece. Not just the term UX didn't start in all the way in ancient Greece. It started off with ergonomics and the words that you see are ergo and nomos. Ergo means work and nomos means natural laws. At the core, it was just to establish a set of principles that were making work more convenient and efficient for the user. And it before this, there's some early documentation of Feng Shui in Japanese culture as well. And now that documentation, if not available, or if I couldn't source it, this is the first thing that we were able to come up with. So ancient Greece always started off. And then if you look at the ancient ergonomics also, like we've looked at the pot example from the uncomfortable project. But this one right here has the bi-handled bronze urn and the tri-handled urn. The bi-handled bronze urn lets you lift. And if you have to pour liquid on, you can use the lower handle and easily pour it on. And then the tri-handle urn that you see that has the other side as well. So you can carry it. One other way was for you to carry it on your shoulders as well, which humans used to do a lot in ancient Greece. So carry it and then pour over liquid with the handle on top. Right. And these were very early guides for those who are aspiring to be product managers. It's called product requirement document. This is specifically that. What it does is it's at the surgery table. This is from a extract from Hippocrates 460 to 370 BC. What it had was exactly where you had to stand when you're performing a surgery, what kind of natural lighting has to be on top of it. So it's basically about efficiency and how the surgeon goes into it, and maybe this is addressing the surgeon alone, and then it says how or where you stand or sit and how do you perform a certain procedure. Now, post that, Frederick Winslow Taylor, this part was called the Taylorism era, wherein he was a pioneer in industrial efficiency. So what he wanted to look at was he started as a foreman, but what he wanted to look at. So people were not being very efficient, like they were just coming, doing what they were told to do, and out of it, the product efficiency was not so much. So at this time of machine industrialism, a lot of these efficiency and these kind of documents were put out, and a lot of research happened on this. And that was the first time someone actually looked at how an assembly line can be optimized for the workers there to improve efficiency. That was the first time it happened. And then later on, between 1940s to 1970s, Toyota was the first one who followed a human-centered production line, which also followed from Taylorism. And then the phone that you look at right now is by Henry Dreyfus, an industrial designer. So what he essentially did was bridge the old principle of Taylorism and the things that had come with Toyota and stuff, and kind of bridge those two principles. And then we all know the era of PCs in the 70s. Now Xerox PARC, which was then Palo Alto Research Center. They were the first ones to do the GUI. They were the first ones to do the mouse. And then Henry Dreyfus was the first one to do the book on designing for people. If you see this third item here, this is where how a person can sit down, place objects around them. How do you use the human anatomy to kind of get there. So, and then the 90s, of course, we all know how computing has, transformed from big offices to small as something on your wristwatch, right? So that kind of how it convert. So why is this of prominence? I understand you've been looking at this history, and the session is about UX and design, but why is this of any prominence, right? So the core of it is when you look from the start of where the Greece they're out trying to optimize stuff, or the production line, or the 70s GUI, or now the, the future towards AI, right? It's all about increasing the efficiency for the users. It is always been about uh, solving users problems and how they can do it better. Yes, the users are different in each of this. For example, assembly line user is someone else, the surgeon is someone else, the computer era, the users were more consumer friendly, and now the AI, it's about removing the users altogether, right? But what is UX, right? So that's where I wanted to kind of cover the brief history, because it is always about optimizing for the users. Okay, 1 second, guys. Give me just a minute, guys. All right, so let's talk about. Yeah, so what is UX for a second, right? So let's see how. So basically, let's look at how I define it. It would be so how I define it is basically a true user experience is one that covers all aspects of user interactions with the company and across every touch point, be it services or products. So this is one part that we're looking at. For example, the visual design is the graphical treatment of interfaces, interaction design, development of application flows. So it starts from right at the bottom where the user needs are there, and right, and then builds all the way to the top with content requirements, everything around the user. So that's where we talk about the all aspects of user interactions. But then we also move to a space where the touch points are also there. So image depicts here a purchase world. For example, if you're to buy a OnePlus 8, right, it starts off with the initial consideration. You look at all the options and then evaluate, do an active research, and then post the purchase also, how you advocate someone else as a user, and then it comes back to someone else, word of mouth, and how does translate for them to buy. It also is not just, so we are typically on the OS side, but it also kind of evolves as to users where or what their purchasing patterns are, and that kind of translates the experience. So if you have a bad experience on the floor, on the retail center, and then you have a bad experience once you open up the phone also. So how do we kind of improve that? That kind of goes back all the way, right? So what is at this? Okay, fine. So that's that's how we've defined it. But let's see how at the core or at the very basic level, what is a user-centered approach? It is basically a user-centered approach, designing with users in mind. bridging the gap between what technology has to offer and what the users want to achieve, right? So understanding the constraints and assumptions, patterns and behaviors. But although it is at a very core level, how do we know these users, right? So that's where UX kind of comes into picture. Like for example, you see the toddler right here, and then at least the student is someone who you think you know, right? A family, an elderly person, right? Even if you think you are one of these users, how do you understand their interests, fears and constraints, right? So how do you design for something an old man or an elderly kind of handles his phone? How do you know that? Or a toddler? See, Magic Mouse from Apple kind of feels a very good design mouse, but how do you feel if you place it for a toddler? How does it going to work? So things have to be specifically designed for each of these demographics. You have to understand what your product does for whom, and then you will have to design that for them. But how do you do that? How I am not a toddler anymore, so how do we get there? So that's the UX loop, and that's how we kind of figure how each of the user goes through every day, right? So and then the first thing we do is a lot of user research on that particular demographic, and then we understand their behaviors, we understand their patterns, we understand their environment. We do a lot of diary studies and a lot of user research, and then initial concepts and prototypes. We kind of build that, and these designs are then adapted from test results, and then we detail out the design after we test it with user again, and we deploy, but we also measure if and then we loop back with feedback. So this is how we kind of work at OnePlus as well. So we kind of take a lot of inputs from the users and test it with the same kind of users for the same product, and then we keep improving, measuring if we are able to achieve what they wanted in the first place, right? So like we said, so the loop, we kind of begin with user research. We also validate if that product is actually needed, if the market fit is there for the product, and we kind of do some typical competitor analysis. So one step at a time. So identify your users first thing. If you're starting to do something like this as a product, I would suggest you also do it. So capture your user, understand who this user is, capture their goals, then aspirations, and what are those influences, how are they biased? If someone else says, hey, this is best, are they biased, are they not biased? What are their fears, and do they understand technology a lot? Because this kind of changes between users to users. This will help you move past for any decisions. So now these users are not always available with you, so building this persona and understanding that, hey, and this kind of problem comes in, they would react in such a way. So the persona will be guiding you all through your process. And then the next thing you would do is map their journeys. So for let's say they've known about the product or the feature, they've known it on the Play Store. How do they get to the Play Store? Have they seen these ads on Facebook, for example, or Instagram? And then how did they come to the site, and what were their expectations? So if you map these out in the journey from awareness, consideration, acquisition, all these steps, so it will give you some pain points and opportunities for you to improve and how to convert them to your user. Yeah. So mapping those is essential. And then wireframe the sketch after you understood what the requirements are, fears and stuff. So start doing wireframing and just test it out. And if you have like a nice group with you, you can kind of brainstorm together and sketch and
Hey,
prototype.
Ujjwal, we are still on the slide 41, I believe. Is it only for me or like most of the guys there?
So
I see certain comments saying that we cannot see the screen, so probably we're still on 41. Yeah.
yeah, I think okay. Let me try and represent. Well, are you still, do you see this now? 41, 42? Guys, do you see 42?
No, we are still on 41. The UX loop.
All right, sorry for that, guys. I've just switched the browser. Let's see if this helps. So I'm going to put in the Chrome tab, and then hopefully this works better. All right, do you see the tabs, guys? Sorry, the tabs.
Yep.
All right, so let's try this. Hopefully this tab works better. Yeah, I think a lot of this interruption has been caused in this call. Sorry if the information is not clearly relayed. So let's look at, now you're probably looking at the overall framework, right? The user-centered approach.
Yeah.
Right. So I was saying this is how we typically kind of do at OnePlus. How we understand is from user research. We do not make any assumptions. We look at what the user wants, do a thorough analysis, and then start building a concept design around it. And once those designs are ready, we test it again with prototypes, and then we lay out a detailed design. And now from there, once the typical layout is also done, we kind of develop, but the problem, then we kind of also send it out to our users. We do A/B testing, we do a lot of user testings, and then we understand the ratings and the feedback from the user, and then update the whole loop again. And then only if you're satisfied, we also have an internal scoring mechanism, and that if that matches, we then launch it to the public. So, right. So if we kind of look back and see one step at a time, we begin with like user research, validate and stuff. So the point where we, I think you guys were cut off, was this point where we kind of build who the user is. We understand this is a typical persona building thing that we do, and we capture their goals, their aspirations, influences that bias their decisions, and right. So even if the user is not there, and most probably they're not always with you, this persona can guide you past any difficult decisions. These help you move past, right? And then we kind of take care of the journey that they're for that persona, for that user. Where have they seen your particular application or feature or your particular product, and how do they come here? What are the pain points? So how do they propagate their feature to someone else? So from awareness of your product all the way to installation, and then word of mouth, consumption, and all of that. So if you map this journey out, you understand where the problem is, or what do they not understand. For example, if you do not understand the customer journey, and if you're laying out ads on Facebook, but your user is someone who's 55 to 65 years old, and you are spending in the wrong direction, right? So users not probably on Facebook. Yeah, there are probably few, but right. So understanding the customer journey is also very important. And then this part we were looking at was the wireframing and sketch. So once you do that, once you kind of understand this persona, you do a thorough research, you understand the persona, you map their journey, which is when you kind of start to wireframe. You can kind of put things together and do an initial wireframe of sorts. Hey, this could be the information architecture. I mean, for example, you have to get the initial architecture done with all of the previous aspects, and there are tons of free pattern libraries that you can already use. If you're starting out, you can basically just pull all of this together and put the flow together. So like I mentioned, the point is to put together ideas rather than how visually appealing it looks. And then post that, validate your idea. You try and get the same user or validate with your persona with some in-house user interviews or surveys or A/B testing. This is a typical process that we kind of follow as well, with some more details. Yeah. And then once all of this test is done, you understand you have this core product, then get into the actual visual style. So, right. So you can repeat the loop as many times as you can. So as long as you implement the insights that you get within each loop and validate with the users, and then move to visual design. Because if you start with visual design from day one, you're already in love with your product, and you wouldn't update feedback from users. It feels, hey, the user may not know, but you just do. But it is up to us to understand what the users actually want. So it kind of is cryptic, but it's you just have to find by practice you will get there. But if you start with visual design first, there are very high chances that you wouldn't want to change your designs. So it's always best to work with wireframes and then get to the final point. But for all of those who have seen it, and we've looked at history, we've looked at how UX works, we looked at the core aspects of it. But so for those who want to start today and say, hey, okay, and I've looked at all of this, but how do we do it, right? So then I have just put 4 basic principles for you, and I've also had some takeaways. This PDF from this part on, I will share it with the moderator as well, and he can have it relay it with you. So follow these 4 principles. No matter how many hosts come to you and give you a lot of webinars, it's all up for you to practice. So I would say learn by doing. So in the following slides, I'll kind of run you through. So understand the UX guidelines, understand the UX process and principles, choose one tool, and stay curious. Just focus on these 4 if you're starting out in UX, right? And then you can move forward. So how? So this is how I map. So for example, understanding the UX guidelines, right? So these are links for each of it. Like for example, this will take you to iOS human interface guidelines, material takes you to Android guidelines, and the typical laws of UX. Follow and understand these UX guidelines, because this makes it a strong base for you in your future projects. For you to understand this is very important. And then after that, understand processes and principles. So for example, I've just kind of said customer journeys, personas, but there are a lot of other aspects as well, which you can very easily implement for every conflict or a decision that you want to make, you can use a lot of these checklists. So survey methods by Google teaches you how to survey. Now you understand that you want to survey, but there are a lot of other aspects. You cannot simply ask leading questions, but by leading, users would basically just say yes and no, and that kind of doesn't give you any insights into what the user wants. So a lot of survey methods are available on this link, and then UX checklist of whatever you want to do for each product. Now it's very exhaustive. You don't have to do all of them, but then you can choose based on your product. And then design kit by IDEO has all interview templates and all of the templates that you would need to conduct a UX research session. And then choose one tool. So at the end of it, guys, this is just a tool. The true creativity is basically your brain or your mind or your thoughts, and nothing else stops you. These are basically tools for you to extend your idea. I mean, for example, those thoughts, you have to explain them clearly to someone, right? To your stakeholders. So for example, here, there are 3 tools: Sketch, Figma, and Adobe XD. Adobe XD and I think Sketch are only available on Mac, but Figma is available everywhere. So you could probably choose one of the free tools. Don't buy them yet. So, and then in combination with Undraw or Flat Icon. So you basically have free illustrations from Undraw, and Flat Icon has all the free icons. So what I'm trying to get you is, if you have an idea, use these tools and templates to basically put that idea together from start to end, and then validate it. That is all that is needed. You don't have to get to visual design yet. So, but once you do, Figma or Sketch or any of these tools can get you to the UI level as well. So these 3 aspects, these 3 principles. But what are the trends in the market? So this is something that you can use from these best folios, UI sources, or awards. Awards is basically for the website. So you can look at all of these and draw inspirations on what you want to do when you get to the visual aspect side of things. So summing up, I think these 4 principles, if you could follow and then practice this, you would probably get to a good beginner design. You would be on your way. So the point being, learn by doing, right? First off, see, yes, UX kind of feels lucrative, but first you start doing it, you practice it, and then you understand. It is very important for you to understand that this is for you. Once you understand this is for you, then you can move forward, right? So then you can commit to where you want to be in your career. You understand what it takes to be a UX designer. Right. So the next aspect, while you're following those 4 principles and following these links, I would like you to steer clear of these, which you will bump into when you're doing any of the projects, which is jumping into action, right? I would say analyze all aspects before jumping in, right? So because if you don't do that, you will end up solving more problems than there actually are. If you could, for this elevator, if you had understood like 46 floors, you could have laid out it very clearly. Or if you could understand where the constant escalator ends up, where you would just go end up nowhere, right? So proper planning, don't jump into action, understand clearly what is that you want to do in the first go, and then get there. So the next one is form over function. Since now I've kind of converted this into a PDF, I'm not able to play these videos out for you, but I would say form over function. Keep it intuitive. Don't follow. I mean, follow patterns and behaviors which have been laid out in the first 4 principles. For example, what this particular thing did was, once you click on it, this dot jumps from here to here, which is not a typical behavior. All of the volume goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10. You cannot like go 10, 20, 30, 40. And enter your phone number, plus doesn't make sense. A simple number. Don't make it all fancy. Follow form, follow patterns, follow behaviors. Please keep that in mind. Innovation is good, but not at the cost of clarity. Yeah, please remember that. And ignoring prototypes. So, for example, we've looked at this problem again. Too often we design for ourselves, and right. So you just have to understand the user's mindset. For example, this is hot and cold that we are looking at, but the color codes may mean something else for some other users. For me, black could be hot. For someone else, white could be cold. But the default way that any of your water coolers have is the left is hot or the right is cold or the other way. But this would get very ambiguous for the users. So stay clear of that, please. And then, yep, like the other aspect is the ambiguity. Stay clear of that too. Like you could kill people with your designs. This is like a straightforward evidence. So like black and gold is a brand, and clearly both of these verticals, both of these design teams haven't talked to each other. Like fly and insect killer has the same kind of yellow color, and canola cooking space also has a yellow color. I understand this is their brand color, but this is ambiguous. And if they are placed in the same space, you know how that will end up. The same with the elevator, right? Somewhere in the implementation, this might have gone wrong. So if I press the top right button, am I going up or am I going down? Right? Am I calling the elevator to go up or the elevator going down? We already have so much issues with any elevator that you observe around you. You have users always, if they want to go down, they press the down button. But they know that. But we all know that if the elevator wants to come up, you press the top button. So there's already a lot of ambiguity there. Right. So for those who are looking at UX as a career, once you've tried all of these principles, once you try to wireframe something, one of these, and you've steered clear of these underlying principles. So for those who are interested after this, UX as a career, there are a lot of branches that UX kind of extends to. In the Indian design space, it kind of moves towards interaction designer, information architect, and all of this plethora of lists that is there. So what information architect does is organize the flow of the website or the product and the information accompanying in it in a presentable way to the primary task. Visual designer, he's someone who plays around with colors and topography. Information designer, with the advent of big data and such, we have websites or products showcasing a lot of complex information. Complex information. How does that appeal to the user? In how good way can we represent this? Is the part of the information designer. UX writer is something quite new in the market. It's an extension of copywriting with basically a lot of focus on the users and setting the tone for the product. So that's something new that has come up. Service designer also. So it's basically between the customer and the user for the company. And the customer side of thing, the retail side of thing, is a service designer comes in. User researcher we talked about. Accessibility is about universal design. Some parts of these are kind of rare, but it would be clubbed. For example, UX designer would have to kind of also look at the accessibility research. And yeah, human factors and ergonomics kind of moves towards the ID side of things and how people sit in office spaces. For example, you understand if you're sitting in an office space, the chairs are quite different because you have to sit down for 8 to 10 hours. Then if you look at chairs or sofas in your home, those are different as well, right? The way, because you don't spend that much time in a chair. I mean, a lot of us do, I do, but yeah, like UX strategist is at the business side of things for the company, and content strategist, how you want to present your brand or present your company, and customer experience is something close to service designer as well. So these are several branches that you can kind of branch out to with UX. Whichever stream you are in right now, there's always a way for you to move to UX. But what is demanded of you? The core it is soft skills. Or basically UX designers spend a great deal of time presenting to clients and stakeholders, interviewing users. So the number one skill to have as UX designer is communication, and it goes both ways. Written, verbal, or visual. The way you represent your idea, the way you get this is very important. Out of which I lay very specific emphasis on assertive communication, because which kind of puts you, because you'd be dealing with a lot of teams, be it development teams, with management, be it with product, be it with a lot of teams. So you will have opposing ideas on that particular design that you have done. How do you assertively say, hey, this is why and this is how? Only then can you make it, can you clearly make them understand from a user standpoint. Empathy is at the core of a UX designer. For you to be in a user's shoes and understand their woes is your number one job. So empathy is absolutely needed. Organized, when I say organized, it's about how, so UX designers would move from one project to the other project very swiftly. You would be shuffling with a lot of stuff going around. So organization within the tools of how you plan things, after what comes what, and your files being available with everyone, so everyone understands it clearly. So that's the part I'm talking about, the organized design, right? So I think post that we'll kind of quickly jump into, I know we've kind of got into a lot of time, so let's quickly jump into what OnePlus design thinks of, how do we stand, what do we do. And so what we aspire for, what our vision is to, when people think about OnePlus, they should think of good design, and we aspire to be the best OS. And our mission is also to realize multicultural user behaviors. At the very core, I know we've covered very briefly on how we understand users, but our core mission is to understand multicultural user behaviors. Because we have a phone shipping out from all the way to India, Europe, China, New York. A lot of these nations have different cultural backgrounds, but to each of these backgrounds, we want to get into the localized services as well, but strictly adhere to the design language, right? And we, not just that, we don't want to get away with the kind of experience. We want to propagate that attention towards the user experience. So tell users that this is the user experience we've done for you, and let them appreciate it. And that's how we want to get there. We want to create experiences people love, create a relationship that people love with our brand, with our products, with our retail centers, right? Experience, when we mean, we mean by the UX or the UI or the interaction or the micro interactions or the audio. So an experience out of when you're using it. And we also lay very strong emphasis on culture, like you've already seen. And our teams are also very dynamic. We are placed out of like I said, New York, India, Shenzhen, and Taiwan, and then create a future that people love. So we constantly push our boundaries to combine design and tech. We always come up with new things. For example, if you've seen the new McLaren Concept One phone, it had a hiding glass behind it. So we've constantly pushed ourselves to give better tech to users. And when we talk about culture, like a lot dynamic teams give us a lot of insights. Each of us comes with different perspectives and biases, and that kind of helps us re-engineer design and project a lot of new designs for our users, which we might have not thought of if we were just focused on one demographic. And I'll kind of next run you through some typical OX. Oxygen OS is what our OS is called, and some designs and how we moved towards what we are right now. So when we first introduced it, it was basically pure Android experience. And the keywords then were like flat, depth, and motion. I'm sorry, it has a lot of videos, but since it's a PDF, I'm not able to play that. Further, I'll kind of send this over. But then we also, after this first versions, we kind of wanted to add our own OnePlus identity. And then we started to go towards flat, minimal, reductionist design, and then bold and clean. You must have heard of reductionist design from the Land Rover Vela. And the next part was, so this is how the designs kind of formulated very early on. and then this is how we've kind of moved towards a little more flat. And then finally, this is where we are at right now. It kind of feels great that we've come all the way from something as pure as Android experience to something that's flat, minimal, bold, and reduction is clear emphasis on what users wants to do, quickly come in, quickly go out, and all of that stuff, and in present content being the king. And so this is some of the wallpapers, how we've kind of transitioned from the 1 series all the way to the 70 series, and now the 8 series as well. One second, guys. All right, so this is our latest designs for the Oxygen OS. Okay. And moving forward, we've also recently released the okay. Within the Oxygen OS, like we were talking about, right? Understanding for Indian users, understanding for our culture, we have built a lot of products and designs as well. So this is with India, you cannot kind of separate these two things. For the love this country has for cricket, it just made sense for us to do something absolutely for cricket. And this is one of the things that we had done, Cricket Scores 2.0, which we had recently implemented. A lot of it had, since it's now a PDF, I'm not able to show a lot of that stuff, but we also did something called work-life balance for starting from India. It's basically that when you are at work, we've understood how digital is affecting our users. So we've also tackled your work-life balance with the feature. It's called the same. So the digital health is basically a serious topic, and as a phone maker, we feel it's our responsibility to help you in that matter. So, for example, once you're at work and your life, for example, work being 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., all of these apps, you will get notifications from only these applications, which can be automatic, which can be configured for you to change later, or when you're at home, only these applications you can get notifications from. This is something that we do as part of a feature called work-life balance, right? In short, right. Okay, 1 second, guys. It's because of this not being a keynote, I'm not able to present few things. Just trying to present that now. All right, so that was our work-life balance video that I wanted to show you. Okay, so we've also covered messages. This is also catering to our Indian users, which is basically you will get a lot of spam messages, you get a lot of transactional messages, but amidst all of this, you miss a lot of your messages, although we moved to WhatsApp and such, but it's so crammed up. So we wanted to clear that space. So what we've done from there on was introduce new categories such as promotional, transactional, and OTP. All of your OTPs are now saved in a separate section so that it clears out. And the transactional messages are now very clearly and fondly visually shown, the kind of amount credited, which bank, and all of that stuff. So it's very clear for our users. So this is something that we've done only for our Indian users, understanding their use cases and scenarios, coming from a different culture and the kind of ways we kind of work with. And then now we've also recently released the OnePlus 8 series, which was very recent and very aggressively priced for the Indian market. So it's a newest addition to our OnePlus Ultra Premium flagship lineup, and it has like 120 Hz fluid display, and it's amazing, boundless beauty. So we've also introduced in the OnePlus 8 Pro the advanced motion estimation, motion composition, and a lot of these algorithms. So it has an increased, for all those gamers out there, it has an increased frame rate of up to 120 FPS or more based on the content that you're looking at. So let me quickly share that as well. All right, so that was the 8 Pro that you had looked at, but we also have the 8 series along with the 8 Pro. And this is called the Interstellar Glow. A lot of these designs we've collaborated with the ID team as well. And yeah, so that's the end of our session, I would feel. And so we can go ahead and start our question time. But before that, I would also say we could connect for all of those who have some design ideas, who always want to contribute towards OnePlus. If you have any ideas that you think OnePlus can do better, you can always get in touch with me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or if you guys are interested and you can raise that request, we can have a dedicated channel that you can kind of drop an email to rather than just flowing through me as well. So we could do that too. So great. So that's us, guys. So this is question time for you. Let me know how you felt of the topic. I understand we had to run through a lot of presenting issues, which is not, which is a first for me as well. So let's go.
Okay, so guys, please feel free to ask questions. You can also put the questions in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself. Okay, so no issues.
Hello, I am Chaitanya.
Hey, Chaitanya. Hello. Hey, Chaitanya.
Like OnePlus has become a company which has been making flagship killers to OnePlus 8 Pro, which is a true flagship right now.
Right.
So, like even before releasing the OnePlus 8 Pro, they have updated the OnePlus symbol and the OnePlus logo. Like how has the transition has been from a flagship killer to a true flagship, like with all the features? with wireless charging and IP68 waterproofing, and that
Right.
MEMC which puts 120 FPS on the display. Like
Right.
it's a big transition from going from flagship killer to a flagship, right? So how
Right.
has the transition has been helping the company and the users?
So I think the flagship market has also kind of moved ahead. We've kind of started also to aspire. For example, if you look at other competitors that we're working with, right? I mean, we're looking at, right? Samsung and all of these have also become even bigger. We are still kind of between flagship killer and being the flagship right now. We are kind of getting there. For example, if you look at the Samsung S20 Ultra as well, we are still kind of priced with the same kind of features, but giving a lot more. So I would say we are still kind of transitioning, Chaitanya, from being this flagship killer to the flagship. But we want to stay connected with our core Indian users who have kind of inspired us so much. So we are still there. And then when you talk about the logo that we've kind of done for the new OnePlus, it's also about transitioning our brand image, which I'll kind of cover. I wanted to do it at the end as well. So we've always forever evolving. Our underlying motto is never settle, right? So we are still never settling towards that feature. It's always about our attempt to give you the best from where we can. And yeah. Hey Chaitanya, did that answer your question?
Hello?
Okay, yes, Chaitanya, go ahead.
Hello. Hey Chaitanya.
Okay, so here's
I think
okay.
I think I have another question by Vamsi Hima. Is designing by code will have a better future? Right. So, got it. Good. I think I've got a couple of questions. I'll probably answer from the chatbot. Meanwhile, what do you mean, Vamsi, by designing by code? So, okay, if you're talking about, so never worry about tools. That's the first thing. But user should be at the base. If right now we haven't moved so far that they can remove a UX designer or the human mind or the thought behind it out of the picture. We need a certain empathy that we see in other users. We are still not yet there, at least from the current market that we look at. AI or ML has not moved there, but still, so you will still see a human being there designing for the user. If that was the question, by code, if it is addressing, if you want to solve it by code, you can. But if it is addressing the core user problem, why not? Right. So if you would like to elaborate on your question, even better, we can kind of discuss on it. Right. And I think the other question that we had was from Kumar Swarnimam. How should a UI UX designer boost his resume to showcase his skills to the recruiters? So Kumar, I think it would be about a very strong portfolio you can build. So the principles that I have laid out in that PDF, which I will share, and probably Shayans can share with all of you guys as well. So build a strong use case, pick up a product, pick up a project, and then rather than the resume, it's about the portfolio and presenting your ideas. A resume only says where you have been, what projects you have done, but it doesn't lay emphasis on how you have done it. If you could showcase how you have done it, that boosts your resume. that boosts your skill set to the recruiters.
Hey, I just want to ask, how can a beginner land a design internship?
Sorry, Anurag, you are breaking up.
How can a fresher land a design internship?
So again, it all comes down to that as well, Anurag. So you will have to kind of showcase that skill set that you have when it comes to obviously internship. You don't have to go to a level where you have implemented something at an enterprise level, but something that runs you through the use case of, for example, the principles that I had shown or the journey that I had shown. Which user were you building this for? What was his action of prominence to that user, and what kind of processes have you followed to solve this for the user? So if you could lay down that as a use case of from being the requirement all the way to the product, I think that clearly showcases that you have the urge, you have this skill set required to build a strong UX career, and that would be great for you in terms of help you a lot in terms of the internships as well. So something that should be focused on. I think the answer would still be the portfolio if you could build. And when it comes to portfolio, don't guys, it could be anywhere. It could be on Behance, it could be on a PDF version all by yourself. Don't worry about the format of it. It is about how you get the idea out to the one you are speaking to. Did that answer your question, Anurag?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. Okay, I have one question from Roma Pai as well. If one is just starting out in this field, what kind of projects or what would be the workflow that does one have to follow? Okay. Let's understand. So if you're starting out in the field, so for example, if it's something that Anurag was just mentioning, right? What kind of company are you looking for as an internship, or what kind of company are you looking forward to work with? These kind of things, if you could clarify by yourself, that gives you a clear idea. For example, enterprise is something that you cannot start off right away, but is it like a mobile application that you're working for, or is it like an e-commerce? For example, if it's Amazon, are you trying to solve something in an e-commerce space? So understand what your goal is for, and then based on that we can choose the projects, I would say, right? So at the core of it, it would still be the same, Roma. It would still be understanding the users and putting that through. Okay, and the workflow is simply there here. If you just started, if you're a beginner, absolute beginner, I would suggest go through that PDF, and I hope Shayans you would be able to give it to all of the participants here, which is when if you could follow, understand those users and put that through, you would be able to come up with a nice workflow PDF. Okay. Hopefully
yes, I will be sharing the PDF. Okay, so we have one more question left from Athresh. Okay, in the chat box it is.
Oh, okay. I think I have. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. From side. Okay. There are two questions actually. Is UX helpful to improve website layouts? Lakshman, if it, for the user, yes. If you understand the user, yes. How do I give you a nice example? So let's say Craigslist is one website. The layout has never changed. The UX has been helpful to the users. The core users want that kind of format. And no matter how many redesign concepts have come, they've all failed because user wants it that way. If you simply go to Craigslist, you will see it. It has been like that for like 10,000 years now. So it is all about what the user wants. If the user wants is, and also the business objective. I am here to take a class. So when the user comes in, that objective needs to be fulfilled. Now, no matter how many effects you add, parallax, whatever effects you add, If that doesn't serve the purpose for the user, the website is of no importance to the user. So it will so it is about how you do it for the user, rather than core looking at the aesthetics only. Okay, so I think that's my answer. And then Kumar had this question, Swarniman had this question. When you started working as a designer like 10 years ago, there were not as many technologies as of now. Is there something you can share about your initial struggles and working on designs for enterprises? Oh yeah, so when I first started, there was no usability, there was no HCI, nothing at all. No one really knew or understood about user experience. And it's a funny story how I know about user experience was I think 2 years before I even started my master's course. I was in this focus group for Harley Davidson. I didn't know what a focus group was back then. I was just very enthusiastic about bikes. So one of my friends had said, "Hey, there's this focus group coming about Harley Davidson," and then they had this whole. They had hosted us in some Taj Krishna. Had this cameras on, talking about what kind of merchandising, asking us questions, a lot of it, right? At the end of it, there was also like lunch, free lunch and stuff, and I felt like, do I have to pay for this lunch types, because I was very new. And then that kind of piqued the interest, and then I talked to the host who was doing it, and then I understood this was a field that was there for a while now, and nobody really knew about it. IDEO started. So then after the masters, come back, every single time we used to say, we're going to improve user experience for you. The only thing that we had got back, not just me, all of my colleagues from back then had got back that, oh, so you do web designs, oh, so you do mobile designs. Back then, even Apple or Google stores were just coming out. For example, Apple App Store had just started, I think, and then Google also. So it was an uphill battle, I would say, but we stuck. I didn't pivot to any other stream, because I understood UX was a great thing to do, and I was passionate about it, and I stuck to UX. That's it. I think that's how I was able to persevere. And the good thing about it was, in the initial companies, at least, I was exposed to a lot of experience. Like, I had worked on mobile applications all the way to enterprise applications, like for iPad applications, for websites, everything that came in. A lot of experience was packed into the first 2 years, and so then it had been just fruitful from there on. Then, yeah. So that was the initial struggle. And for those, I know I'm talking to the tech out there. For those, my engineering background has also been electronics and communication engineering, which is where after in my second or third year, like I said, right, the focus group and stuff, which is when I pivoted to this field in my master's. So yeah, so I think that's my personal idea. Go ahead, Atrish.
Yeah, hi, Ujjwal. I think you messed out my question on the chat box. But anyway, so it's like probably a small, feature request or something like that. So my question was, we've seen a lot of productivity-based devices like Ratio, which have screens that are only text-based and no icons, and which have only productive widgets and stuff like that. So in the work mode that OnePlus has been talking about, will we look at something like that, or how is it going to work? So basically, like a launch. Yeah.
No. I think. Sorry. So the thing was, work-life balance is now a feature, wherein what we are trying to do is understand. We've seen a lot of inputs from our users saying when in work they're disturbed by a lot of life messages. They're not able to focus so much. When in life they want to only focus with family and not think about work, and that's how this kind of started. With work-life balance. Yes, we are. I cannot divulge much right now, but the current version, what it does is you can automate these features by, for example, geofence yourself by any proximity to your office. It kind of switches, and you can say not just work. For example, some parts of, I understand in India at least, you cannot strictly negate when you're at work, not do anything in life, and when in life you cannot touch anything in work. But you can choose to say that I want this particular application from life to be available in work as well, which is when you're very focused in what you're doing at work. For example, as students, right, you can do that too. For example, if you set up work-life balance in the proximity of your college, which you would want, if you would want to do, then you would not get any life applications, and only college-focused applications can work. So that's how we are at. This is the current version that we are at. But Atrish, it would not be very fair for me to divulge any further information in where our roadmap is for work-life balance. I understand what you're talking about. Ratio is coming with Block as a launcher, and we've seen that too.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the question, man. Good one.
Okay, so there's one more question from Chaitanya left in the chat box, I think. Well,
All right. Yeah, I think Chaitanya, we had asked that vocally as well. He has the same question: how we moved from flagship killer phones to true flagship, how the transition helped the company, right? So I think that was answered as well, Chaitanya.
yes, sure. So I think we don't have any more questions. So thank you so much, Ujjwal, for answering each and every question.
Right.
And
I just wanted to say I hope you've all enjoyed this session. I know there were some interruptions in between, and I had to pivot to the PDF, and some content was not able to play for you. But I hope this was a session, and between this interruptions and transitions, I don't know if it was very seamless, which I always like to be. But I hope you enjoyed the session. But I have a video for all of you as well, which I would like to play. So this is basically dedicated to you guys, the hypertaskers, the university students. All right, so that's it, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed the session.
yes. So thank you so much, Ujjwal, for joining us today. And thank you so much, guys, for joining us today in the morning itself. And we hope it was a wonderful session for and an insightful one for you all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.